Simmons going to get thrown out of the game, I think.
Sports are entertaining to watch because they're not perfect. Their unpredictability of the game and its players really makes the viewing experience remarkable. But sometimes, athletes take it too far and dishonor themselves and the game. But sometimes, whether by fate or by other, more physical means, these players are taught a lesson. So here's 10 times a dirty athlete got a taste of his own medicine. Are you ready? Let's get into it. Number 10, Shea Weber and Matt Cook. First up on this list, we have Matt Cook, one of the dirtiest players in the history of the National Hockey League. The athlete was one of those players you would love to have on your side and hate to play against. Cook has a history of ruthlessly throwing cheap shots. Over his career, he's received several suspensions and is perhaps most infamous for throwing a hit to the head of Boston Bruins forward Mark Savard in March 2010, which kept Savard out of the game for months. Erik Karlsson is another athlete whose career Cook jeopardized. In 2013, he stepped on the back of Karlsson's leg with his skate, cutting his Achilles tendon. But alas, in a game against the Nashville Predators in January of 2015, Cook gave Predators captain Shea Weber a cross-check to the face. Weber was quick to retaliate. He charged at Cook and dropped his gloves. By doing so, he ensured that Cook understood he wouldn't get away with his cheap shots every time. Number 9. Sean Avery. There's a reason why Sean Avery is unofficially crowned one of the dirtiest players in the NHL. From dirty slashes to cheap shots, there isn't a lot this athlete has left to the imagination when it comes to foul play. Most famously known for standing in front of Martin Brodeur while waving a stick in the air, making inappropriate comments about NHL players and about women he's dated in the past. Even his teammates and coaches seemed unable to stand him. After being consistently chided by the league and even by his own team for his actions on and off the ice, it seems as though he still hasn't learned his lesson. He was even suspended in 2009 for a full 6 weeks, after which his team at the time, the Dallas Stars, announced their displeasure. They claimed that he would never work with them again after the inappropriate remarks he had made about his girlfriend. Shortly after, he was bought out by the Stars. Number 8. Ulf Samuelsson. Ulf Samuelsson is the first name that comes to most of our minds when we think about foul play in the NHL. Notorious for being one of the dirtiest and most hated NHLers of his time, Samuelsson has even sent fellow NHL athlete Cam Neely into early retirement. Infamously garnering the reputation for being a knee hitter, Samuelsson hit Cam Neely in the knee during the 1991 playoffs. Neely was never able to recover, and thus was forced to retire from the game entirely. 4 years later, in 1995, when Samuelsson was playing for the New York Rangers, he finally got a taste of his medicine. During a game with the Toronto Maple Leafs, player Ty Domi punched Ulf Samuelsson right on his face. The punch knocked Samuelsson out, and Domi's defense was that he had it coming. Domi justified his actions by saying Samuelsson was asking to be punched since he kept calling him a dummy. While this isn't a legit excuse, Samuelsson may have finally gotten what he deserved. Number 7. Richie Incognito. Known to be an offensively dirty player in the National Football League, offensive lineman Richie Incognito went off the rails in 2013. When fellow offensive linemen did not behave as Incognito desired, he used racist and homophobic slurs to toughen him up. Apparently, the harassment and bullying were going on for years behind the scenes. This wasn't even the first time that he decided to bully or traumatize fellow player Jonathan Martin, who even considered retirement, and later followed through with it in 2015. Even though Incognito wasn't the only bully, and Jonathan wasn't his only victim, reports spread like wildfire until the Miami Dolphins released John Jerry and Incognito. He voluntarily decided to undergo treatment in Arizona and set out the 2014 season. Later, he was signed by the Buffalo Bills, the team he left to join the Dolphins. Number 6. Chad Johnson. Famously known as one of the fastest and best receivers, retired wide receiver for the Bengals, Chad Johnson had a great NFL career. He was so good that the fans voted him to the 40th anniversary team as the top receiver. Johnson celebrated this wildly and profusely. However, no one was as abusive in their treatment as Johnson was. Some of his over-the-top demands included having a list of players guard him, or rather, players that he would force to kiss the baby on game day. While he was loved by the Bengal fans, he was hated by every other fan base. It all changed in 2021 when reports of Johnson being a wife-beater surfaced. Johnson had headbutted his wife and was charged with domestic battery. After being arrested for the incident, Johnson was released by the Miami Dolphins the very next day. They wished to not be associated with him anymore. He has been out of the NFL since, trying his hand at broadcasting and coaching. Number 5. Dale Hunter. Another NHL player that prioritized physical strength in his game was Dale Hunter. Even though he had a promising career, during a game against the Islanders in the 1993 playoffs, Hunter threw a blindside hit on Pierre Turgeon after he celebrated scoring a goal. The hit, regardless of his intention, ended up breaking his shoulder irrevocably, forcing him to retire. Hunter was given a long and severe punishment for this. He was sentenced to a 21-game suspension, the harshest punishment in NHL history at the time. Number 4. Bill Laimbeer. Bill Laimbeer from the Detroit Pistons center was notorious for illegally hitting his rivals whenever they drove into the lane. He excelled in dirty plays, fouls, defense, and was also known to be a notorious bully in the NBA. Seemingly innocent, on a team with Dennis Rodman and Rick Mahorn, it was Laimbeer who was considered the most ferocious player. Of course, that wasn't the case, as he's still considered by many to be the dirtiest NBA player ever. In 1993, Laimbeer got into a fight with team leader Isaiah Thomas. Heated, Laimbeer hit Thomas in the rib as the point guard was driving to the basket, and Thomas retaliated with a punch that broke Laimbeer's hand in the process. The player retired at the beginning of the 1994-95 season, but the amount of praise that Thomas garnered from the league showed how despised Laimbeer really was. Number 3. Isaiah Thomas. Apparently, Isaiah Thomas wasn't what the general public and the NBA believed him to be, as this charming man turned out to be a big bully in the NBA. When working as an executive for the Knicks, Thomas was too stubborn and confident to listen to anyone but himself. Not only was he stubborn, but he was also ignorant and made a lot of bad trades when managing the Knicks. And it gets even worse. In 2007, Thomas overdosed on some sleeping pills, then called 911 and claimed it was his daughter who had overdosed. This pattern continued even as he was hospitalized, claiming his daughter was the one with the problem. In 2006, a former employee even filed a harassment lawsuit against Madison Square Garden. It was Thomas who had harassed her there, and the team had to pay her $11.6 million in punitive damages. But we suppose his inability to get himself a decent and respectable job has been punishment enough for Isaiah. Number 2. Marty McSorley. Today, we know him as a rather bland journeyman who scored 50 points in his professional career just once, but McSorley was once a celebrated name in the NHL. He was best known for his role as Wayne Gretzky's bodyguard on the ice as an enforcer who actually knew how to play hockey. After being traded from the Kings, McSorley never found a permanent home, dwindling from one realm to the next. Collecting an impressive amount of penalties seemed to be the only thing he was good at. On February 21, 2000, as his Bruins played against the Canucks, McSorley was hit in the head by another enforcer, Donald Brashear. The stick was struck straight at his head, and Brashear suffered a concussion, and a full-on brawl erupted on ice. Fortunately, there were consequences for McSorley. He was charged with an assault with a weapon and banned from the NHL forever. Number 1. Diego Maradona. Diego Maradona is an arrogant man, and this has always been common knowledge. His most notorious achievement in the 1986 World Cup win was also his most controversial. It is, however, his coaching career that got him back for all of his past sins. As the manager of Argentina's national team, he oversaw the team's biggest defeat in history, 1-6, and got eliminated 0-4 by Germany in the quarterfinal. He even fought fans of opposing teams and was later fired when the team finished the season in 8th place.